Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jim. Welcome back to the channel. I am back with another video because it's top of mind and I'm thinking about it. Of course, here we are in January 2026. We have a brand new Star Trek series available to start watching online on Paramount Plus and other means of watching it. Hopefully you're checking it out because so far I'm liking what I'm seeing. And this is coming from a Gen X, Gen X queer white guy, and I've seen so many things online that a lot of people are really hating on this series, and of course that's nothing new for Star Trek, right? I mean, I was watching Star Trek way back in the 70s and 80s, and I remember when Next Generation first came out, and there were haters in Starlog magazine talking about Next Generation was not going to be good, and they can't replicate Kirk and Spock and all this stuff, and it just seems to be a subset of the Star Trek population that continually poo-poos the new series coming out. It happened for Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise. Like literally every single Star Trek series that has come out has had its negative people harshing on it for really no good reason, other than just reacting to the marketing and to the posters and to the little drips and drabs of information that comes out. And it's like, okay, but I think a lot of it's just the internet and how easy it is to anonymously hate on stuff on the internet, and you can just spew your bile all over the place. And those of us who just want to enjoy it are like, okay, or block, ignore, move on, or just try to just not look at the, not focus on the negative. It's one thing to not like it for reasons, right? Like, I mean, if you have a reasonable complaint about it and you can pick it apart and be rational about it, sure, yeah, totally do that. I mean, obviously. But if you're just like spewing hatred and negativity and bile and just for whatever reason, no one's gonna take you seriously, right? I mean, we don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Come on, get out of here. Anyway, so in my opinion, before we jump into the meat of the video here, Starfleet Academy, solid pilot. I don't think it's the best Star Trek pilot ever, but I think it was solid. It did everything it needed to do, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Great characters, great actors, fabulous visuals. Of course, this is what I expect from Star Trek these days, is really, really sharp video, video, graphics, etc. Music's fantastic. There are so many musical cues from different Star Trek soundtracks and periods, like original series movies, DS9, etc. There's just so much in that soundtrack that is evocative of so many things in Star Trek, which is really cool. I love the sound effects. There are so many great little sound effects and sound cues that aren't musical related that tie back to previous Star Trek. In particular, a couple of things I noticed is the background radio chatter when Captain Ake is coming in to see the Athena for the first time, and you get the nice little beauty shot of the Athena in the space dock. There's just some nice background radio chatter that really, really evoked the original series movies, where Kirk is coming to go see the Enterprise in Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock. There's just that that background chatter that makes it feel authentic. I really appreciated that. So in my opinion, there's just a ton of upside to this series. I think if there was one thing I'm unhappy about, is that this whole cast the whole cast of characters is really cool and interesting, and I want to spend more time with them. I think one of the things that we got a little spoiled with, in retrospect, with Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, etc., is that we had 26 episodes to get to know these characters and to invite them back into our homes week in and week out. And even if the episode wasn't like the best episode ever, we still got another hour with these characters to learn a little bit more about them and learn about their quirks and learn about what they want and who they are. And we're not going to get that quite as in the same way with this, because it's only a 10 episode season. And you've got a large cast to service, and I want more time. Like I see what's happening with the characters. It's like, oh, I want to see that relationship evolve. And what I'm a little nervous about is that they're going to go boom, boom, boom. They're going to accelerate these things a little bit, which I guess in this day and age is to be expected, right? Because I think the newer generation that they're really targeting wants things a lot faster. Whereas, the older folks like me, Gen X, we want to take our time with it a little bit. But even that being said, this is Star Trek, and I think we've got, of my generation and, millennials and boomers. We kind of had this expectation of we want to spend some time with these characters, and part of it's because the actors did such a great job of portraying these characters, right? It's like they're putting cool stuff on there. The writers are doing a nice job starting to pick out details for each character. We're getting to see them interact. We're getting to see each of them be a hero. That's important for the pilot. We'll talk about that in a second. So it's just like, okay, give me more time with these characters, and don't just like boom, 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 10 episodes, you're done. See you next season. And at the moment, I know they've greenlit season 2, but we don't know what's going to happen because that season 2 was greenlit probably before the merger was finalized, and there's just a kind of a big question mark right now about what's to come. Are they going to cut this series loose after 2 seasons and just kind of like hamstring it, or are they going to give it some life and some time? And I tell you, like if I had my druthers at Paramount, I'd be like, give this thing in a couple more seasons, because they're here clearly hitting the right notes. I think, like I said, in my opinion, I don't think it's the best Star Trek pilot ever. I think that's Emissary, DS9. But this is a solid pilot because it does everything a pilot needs to do. But and I would say this pilot is the one Star Trek pilot that probably has the most heart in it. Like the characters are so earnest and so good, and there's just so much uplifting material in this pilot episode. It's not just the music, it's the acting, it's the writing, it's the visuals. I mean, it's just everything, in my opinion, is working for this pilot, right? And that's refreshing, right? Especially in this current political and social climate, a lot of challenges like every day on the news and out there in the world. It's like, man, this is hard stuff that we're going through right now collectively, and to have a new Star Trek series that is just so uplifting in so many different ways, but plus has its elements of real stuff, right? Real hard stuff. It just, like, I felt my heart swelling when I was watching the entire first pilot. I've watched it 3 or 4 times now already, and I watched it again before this video just to refresh my memory so that we could talk about it. So what I want to do in this video is kind of do the from screen to table, talk about this from an RPG perspective. I know a lot of people are out there right now reviewing the episode, reviewing the series, reviewing characters, all that stuff that you would expect. But because I am the project manager of the Star Trek Adventures RPG, I thought I would come at this from an RPG perspective. Like maybe you are a game master and you want to run a Star Trek episode or Star Trek campaign. Maybe you're a player that you want to try out Star Trek Adventures and you don't know how to get started, or you're just thinking about maybe your group is getting together and we're going to play Star Trek. Where do we even get started? You can certainly go get some free resources off the Modiphius Star Trek Adventures downloads page. There's a document there about how to start, how to hold a session 0, how to talk about this stuff. And so we'll talk about some of that. And apologies, I'm going to look at my phone because that's where all my notes are. So let's talk about a pilot, right? So, excuse me. The session 0, of course, is important, and I think we've talked about that elsewhere. But a pilot, your first episode of a campaign, is really important too, because you're setting. It has to do so much stuff, and it's true for a TV show as well as an RPG, because you have to set up everything in order to get the players hooked and to carry forward. So you've got to set up the stakes, you've got to set up the characters. Ideally, you're setting up the main antagonist, you're setting up the setting. And you're trying to start building those interconnections between the characters, because of course, what's Star Trek all about? It's about the characters. In fact, this episode, one of the notes I had, which I thought was really cool, in reflecting, is that there wasn't unless I missed it just now rewatching it, but there's not a science MacGuffin thing in this episode that happens that everybody reacts to, and then you solve the plot, right? That's not this episode, right? Whereas Emissary, they had to deal with the prophets, they found the wormhole, they were experiencing the things that were happening. In this episode, though, pretty much, as far as I can remember, everything that happens is a consequence of a character's action, right? We open up, we get some backstory, so presumably the players got together, created these characters. I think Nala certainly is probably a main character. I can see the argument where she might be a supporting character, or supervisory character. If you're talking second edition or even first edition, she could be a supervisory character that the players are taking turns playing. But I think if I were running this as a game, Nala Ake would probably be a main character. Of course, all the main students are main characters. The Doctor, probably a supporting character. Some of the other educators, like the cadet masters, probably a supervisory character. But I could also make the argument for her being a main character. But I guess it just depends on what the mix of the player group looks like. I like the idea of running this kind of like Lower Decks, where all the main characters are the cadets, and then you've got a bank of supervisory characters that the players can pull on and play. So I can see some arguments either way. But that opening scene probably would have just been a conversation at session 0, unless the game master wanted to take two of the players, and play through that opening scene, right, where Ake captures Noose Braka and takes the mom and him into custody, and then Caleb is sent to to Federation custody. But Caleb grabbed the comm badge off her chest. That might have been an opposed task, or it might have just been a simple task. Caleb doing it, having loaded up traits in the scene to make it easier for him to do that. Distracting Ake with the whole situation, whatever. So that was a nice little little backstory bit, and then the bit with Caleb in the shuttle going to the penal colony. That was a nice combat scene. There's some nice a lot of threat spends there from the game master. Caleb certainly suffering some stress, having to do that fighting and everything. That all, and then he took command of the shuttle and then got captured by the tractor beam, by the ship coming and taking him captive. I think that would have been a very easy scene to play out in the first episode, or that could have all just been backstory, and we could open up with Ake. In fact, the scene with Ake and the Admiral Vance, that might have been backstory too, leading up to the setup in the episode. So that maybe the first scene in your episode is Ake confronting Caleb and having a conversation back and forth about making the bargain to serve your time in Starfleet. There's a lot of ways you could have played with that. I think that would really have been dependent on the conversation in session 0, right? If the player playing Caleb and the player playing Ake really wanted to go into the depth on those character scenes and introduce their characters to the other players, I think that would have worked out pretty well. A lot of ways you can play with it. One of the other important things I thought that that opening scene set up, though, between Caleb and his mom, is the little education session where Caleb is reciting the names of the moons or the planets, because that little piece was very clear foreshadowing of something that happens later in the episode. So that was a nice little setup there, and maybe that's just something that the player and the game master maybe would have worked up together. So, as a pilot, it's really important to set the scene, set the stakes, set the setting. Of course, the setting being the Athena, right? The USS Athena, Starfleet Academy, not just the ship, but also the San Francisco campus. And so we very clearly got the Athena. It's the 32nd century, so the ships are even more bright and expansive than the Enterprise D bridge. It's a conference center hotel in space, basically, right? Because there's just tons of space, and it's very bright and shiny and pretty, and that's really cool. But we got the opportunity to really set ourselves into the setting and get a feel for it. The pilot introduced all the main characters, so all the students, all the critical students, got an introduction, and over the course of the episode, they all got a chance to shine, right? So they all got a chance to be a hero. They all got to have a cool, important moment or two. And that's really important as an ensemble piece, especially because this season is 10 episodes, right? So you've probably got to lean into the ensemble pieces more than, this is an Ake episode, this is a Sam episode, this is where a 26 episode season probably had more room to do that. In 10 episodes, there's not quite as much room. It's still doable, certainly, but you need to have more things for the other characters to do either as an ensemble or just by sharp scene cuts to make sure everybody has something to do. But in the pilot instance, like every main character had something significant to do. Not just the cadet kids, but also the senior staff. Mostly Ake and Cadet Master Thok. They were the primary two. Although Doctor had some cool stuff, and the bridge crew was nice to actually get their names right away. I wonder if they learned a lesson from Discovery, where in some cases we didn't know the bridge crew's names until season 2. But to introduce them all right away was really nice. And also importantly, were that flashback scene between Ake and Nusbraka and Caleb and Caleb's mom also set up Nusbraka as a bad guy, or not a bad guy, but as the primary antagonist. And that's really cool too, because he's not just your typical nefarious bad guy, right? He's got some depth. There's some character connections there. He's connected to Ake, and Ake is connected to Caleb, and they're both connected to Caleb's mom. There's those 4 characters have an interconnectedness that I'm confident they're going to explore over the course of this season, which is really interesting, right? And that creates some stakes for the Caleb character, but also the Ake character, because they're all kind of at odds with each other. And I just think it's really interesting that they built that in right away, which is cool, because that's something that you can be doing with your group and your group of characters, to start building in some of those interconnected relationships, not just with each other, but also with the main antagonist, who will probably come back time and time again. Let's see, looking at my notes here. One of the things I found funny, this isn't specifically related to RPGs, but I like the world building that they're trying to do in the pilot. It's important for the pilot, especially if you're setting it far in the future. You need to set the ground rules for how things work differently compared to the 24th century, the 23rd century that we're used to from all the other TV series, Star Trek series that we've watched. So you can see that, like, even in the 32nd century, comm badges are wonky pieces of technology, because they don't have any biometrics except when it's convenient, which is kind of weird, right? Caleb was able to steal Ake's comm badge and use it to open up the shield to get out of the facility. But you would think, like, okay, why couldn't it figure out that wasn't actually Ake, right? How could the computer recognize the comm badge but not recognize the fact that it wasn't Ake holding it or wearing it, right? And in fact, we see that 15 years later, when Genesis is trying to use Thok's code to get into the system in order to help Cadet Remy. And it was like, okay, you got the code, but I'm not recognizing your voice pattern. So, like, the computers can recognize voice patterns, but they can't recognize biometrics. It's just whatever. It's the power of convenience for the sake of the script. But that's the stuff that, like, RPG gamers are like, let's be consistent, please. let's try to find some through line here. And as a game master, I would probably try to find a way to rule one way or the other, and then be consistent with that from episode to episode. But minor quibble. Let's see. One of the things that this pilot also did a nice job of is a couple of the characters expressed who they are and what their values are. And I know we've talked about this a lot, not just in the books, our Star Trek books, but also just in talking online. Listen to the dialogue, because often a character will tell you who they are and what they believe just by what they're saying. And there was one line that Ake said, "I won't make promises to more kids I can't keep." That's a value right there. I mean, if you're playing Star Trek Adventures and you need a value for your character, I won't make promises to more kids I can't keep. That's a value, right? And then later in the episode, I think it was Nusbraka had one. When he's on the Athena and trying to take the warp drive, and he leaves, but then he comes back and fights Caleb. There's one point where Brocka's got a gun to Caleb's head, and he says, "I can always smell a lie." I can always smell a lie. That's another value right there. That's great value. Really great stuff. Let's see. What else? So this pilot did a great job setting up the characters, setting up some of the stakes, setting character stakes, and then what's going on. You don't have to have watched any Star Trek to kind of get into this, because they explain what the burn was right up front. The burn was this horrible, awful thing that happened, and now we're dealing with it. We're dealing with the aftermath. We're trying to rebuild from that. It reminds me a little bit of World War III and Enterprise rebuilding, recovering from that. And it reminds me of, oh my gosh, there's so many examples. Wolf 359 happens, the Federation has to recover from that. There's a lot of examples of cataclysms that occur in the Star Trek universe that then have to be rebuilt and recovered from. And I think, the Dominion War is a good example. The Romulan supernova, and then now we've got the burn. And the burn impacted everybody. How did it impact everybody? Now we're rebuilding Starfleet Academy, and now we're moving forward. It's a great launching point for a new generation of storytelling, I think. And they're establishing that in the pilot, because they're saying, okay, this is where we are, that's where we're going. We're not gonna go backward in time. We're not gonna futz with legacy stuff. We're just gonna we're planting our flag. The burn happened. We're rebuilding. Now we're going forward with it, right? And that's really nice, just to see, okay, this is where we're going. So if you're the game master, and you got your players doing the pilot, you're establishing those parameters right away. You're saying, okay, this thing happened, and here's our mission, our broad umbrella mission for the campaign. We are going to rebuild Starfleet Academy and move forward to help rebuild the Federation. And are they going to rebuild it to what it was? Well, no, of course not, because you can never go back. You can only go forward, right? Of course, it's Star Trek and time travel, timey-wimey stuff, whatever. But the idea is, especially with the second episode that we've seen and I haven't talked about yet, you have to move forward. You have to grow. You have to change. You have to move forward. Otherwise, you're just going to stagnate, and you're going to be stuck in a cycle or a loop. And I think they kind of identified that, and it gets reinforced in the second episode. So clearly, they're setting the ground rules for the campaign and for the series, and then you're moving forward with it, and the characters are experiencing it. Now, for the cadet characters, it's kind of cool. It's not them meeting in a bar, right, in your typical fantasy RPG situation, but they are new characters meeting each other at the academy day one. The vast majority of people can identify with the joys and challenges and the trepidations of that first day of school, right? You're going to a new school. You don't know all the people. You got to get familiar. Everybody's, for the most part, everybody's off balance a little bit, right? And you're trying to react to it. So you see those friendships being formed. You see those connections being made. Some of the rivalries are starting to happen, and that's all the players interacting with each other and coming to the table, virtual or physical, with their character and saying, well, here's my character, here's some of the things I can do, here's some of the things I'm about, here's what matters to me. And the game master, the smart game master, looked at all their character sheets and was like, okay, I'm going to give them opportunities to shine and do specific things. So Jaden had an opportunity to do some medical stuff. What is his name? Remy had an opportunity to show off the fact that he's a new species and can survive a limited amount of time in the cold of space, right? So, clearly this group had access to the species source book, right? Because they were able to build some new characters, some new species, and blend some of the existing ones. So we've got a half Tellarite, half Klingon. We've got a half Jem'Hadar, half Klingon. We've got a couple of new species. We've got a photonic / hologram. They're clearly pulling stuff out of the species source book and making use of it, including the create your own original species subchapter in the back there. And that's how you got the Kyonians, right? Creating the Kyonian character. And that's an opportunity so that the players aren't just saying, I am a Kyonian, here's what I can do, this is my species ability, blah, blah, blah. It's like you're actually able to dynamically do it in the moment of the episode, and that's a good game master probably giving them yes and moments, and also giving them moments to shine and to highlight each character, right? So the game master probably had an idea in their head of what was going to happen. Or maybe the game master just was starting to throw stuff at them just to see what happens. because like I was alluding to earlier, like everything that happens in this episode is a consequence of what somebody did, right? So Caleb steals the communicator, gets away. He tries to break out of the shuttle but gets captured. He agrees to do the service with Ake at Starfleet Academy. While he's at Starfleet Academy, he intentionally hacks the communication system to try to send a message to his mom, not realizing that Noose Brocka was listening in. That wasn't the game master saying, "Oh, this weird science MacGuffin is happening," or "this weird thing over here is happening." That was the player saying, "Oh, you know what? I don't really want to be here. I'm kind of having to, play out my service, but if I've got some spare time, I'm gonna go hack the computer system and try to send a message to my mom." Okay, the game master's like, "Okie dokie, you want to do that? Let's go. Let's make it happen." Or maybe Caleb's player and the game master talked ahead of time and said, "Hey, here's how I want to introduce your character. Let's get some arcs going here. Let's get some growth going in here. How about you hack the system, try to send a message to your mom, and that'll cause things to happen otherwise." Like, so there's one way, that's one way of doing it. Or maybe the game master was just like, "Here's the inciting incident," or here's the opening. You all are at the academy. You're experiencing stuff, and then Caleb, maybe being a good player and wanting to not just sit back and wait for something to happen, but actually actively do something. It was like, you know what? Caleb's the type of character. I'm going to go hack the system. I'm going to go try to send a message to my mom. And in fact, he explains himself, right? He explains to Genesis when Genesis catches him. He says, "I'm not going to be here long anyway. I'm out of here as soon as I get an opportunity." And the consequence of him sending that message is Noose Brocka was listening in. So that's a complication right there, right? That could be a complication, or that could be the game master creating a reversal, or that could be the game master just sitting back and saying, "Oh, you sent a message with your secret code? Well, guess what? Noose Brocka knows that secret code, and he's going to come after you." And so all of a sudden, like within minutes of him sending that message and shutting it down, Noose Brocka shows up with the ship and beats the hell out of the Athena. With the programmable matter torpedoes and then grappling hooks or grappling cables, grappler cables. So and that would not have happened if Caleb hadn't made that choice, right, to do something. And so that's a lesson too for players. Like if you players, especially the cautious players, when you're playing Star Trek in general. Star Trek characters do things. They take chances. They take risks. Risk is our business, as Captain Kirk tells us. It's certainly fine to play the game and sit back and wait for the game master to feed you stuff and to react to it. But more often than not, Star Trek characters are active. They're doing things. They're trying things. They're experimenting. They're pushing the boundaries of what's known, and they're trying to do stuff. So, play your character maybe, and maybe be willing to take a risk, take a chance, do something different than what you might personally choose to do, and see what happens. And if your game master trusts you and you trust the game master, and there's like a good connection between the players and the game master, magic can happen. Absolute magic can happen, as we saw on the screen, and as I've seen in decades of Star Trek RPGs. Anyway, so then of course that whole thing happens. They recover from that. Noose Brocka gets away. We're going to put a little asterisk on that just to kind of let it go, because, like, in my opinion, okay, Noose Brocka was in an escape pod. He got away. Escape pods generally can't go to warp, so, like, why didn't they just pick him up on their way to Earth? Like, how did he get away? But we'll just let that go, because bad guys get away. Adversaries get away so that they can come back another day or another episode. So great to continue that little through line of Noose Brocka being a menace at the beginning, and then shows up in the middle, gets away, and at some future episode, I'm confident he'll come back. Even though it's only 10 episode season, I'm sure we'll see him back at some point. Probably the midpoint, maybe just thereafter. I don't know. But I bet we talk about him. I bet they talk about him and his little vigilante organization or whatever. Let's see, other things I picked up on. One of the things that a pilot can do, depending on how into it you are, is to help set the tone, right? You can set the tone for not just the episode, but for the entire series. Like I was mentioning earlier, I felt so much hope and so much heart from this episode, not just from the characters, but the music and the sound effects and everything else. And I think one of the really powerful things that they did in this episode to help set that tone is the San Francisco song near the end, when they're approaching San Francisco, and you hear that absolutely beautiful. I'm already getting verklempt. That absolutely beautiful rendition of If You're Going to San Francisco, and that is a tone setter, right? And it was really powerful. And it's like, oh, okay. And you see the hopeful looks on their faces as they're coming into to dock at Starfleet Academy, and so hopefully they keep that kind of core tone throughout all the episodes. We'll have to see how it goes. I mean, so far they've been doing okay with episode 2 and episode 3, but we'll have to see how it how it continues or changes. Let's see. So music, really important if you have the ability to do it. I like to use music in my campaigns and episodes sometimes. Sometimes if I'm fiddling with the iPod or a device or something, it gets a little distracting. Online, I use Discord or Roll20, and I'll just preload tracks onto Roll20 to play them in the background. So use music strategically. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up with devices at the table, whether it's virtual or in person. So just be careful with that. Was there any other notes? I mean, again, there was just a lot of great stuff going on here, and I really appreciate that every main character had something important to do and to contribute to the episode. From an RPG perspective, that's exactly what you want. You want to have everybody at the table having something to do and something to contribute. In some cases, taking the initiative, and in some cases, taking advantage of the opportunities that are put in front of them. Like I'd say, Sam had a couple moments where she was very proactive in like helping to turn the lights on in the hallway by being a photonic. She interfaced with the computer systems. She was a little passive in the scene in the science lab where Jaden was trying to help Thok. But she was adding like little non sequiturs and little comments and stuff, which was really cool. So as I can see that happening in an RPG scenario where the players are kind of bouncing back and forth. Jaden's doing the bulk of the rolling, and Sam is there, probably trying to assist and failing. Right? I think that's probably how that worked out. Is Jaden was trying to do the medical task. Sam was like, "Oh, I'll help," and probably failed at her assist, and that's why Thok grabbed her and said, I require significantly less cheerfulness in my final moments, or whatever the line was, which is great. But everybody else had meaningful stuff to do, and I think they're doing a really nice job setting up these characters for interesting roles. I mean, it seems like Genesis seems to be destined for a command role. Sam probably operations. Cadet Remy maybe command. A little unsure about that one. Probably command. He's got the right can-do, haughty attitude to go for command. And Caleb, I mean, gosh, he's such an engineer or such an operations officer, right? He's got the security combat talents. And he's also got the technical know-how. So I would totally see him as a chief engineer or something. I think if he were to grow over the course of the 1 or 2 seasons or whatever, maybe he's got command potential. He reminds me a lot of Dow from Prodigy, where he's kind of the really kind of the loose cannon who needs to be molded and seasoned, but definitely engineer material for now. So let's see, looking at my notes, anything else that I noticed really critical? Just part of the world building. One of the funny things that I was thinking about as I was watching it or rewatching it is, of course, Captain Ake, or Chancellor Ake, was on Bajor and transferred to the Athena to become the Chancellor of the Academy. At some point, Cadet Master Thok told her, all of your stuff has been transferred to your quarters, right? So all your physical books, all your physical things that you had at home on Bajor have been transferred here. And that made me think, like, somebody had to do that, right? Who does that? Is that an operations thing? Is that like, I mean, it's not the Corps of Engineers, but it's like, is it a diplomatic service? There's some wing of Starfleet, or maybe the War College, probably Starfleet. But there's somebody who has to schlep Chancellor Ake's stuff from Bajor to the Athena, and it's probably part of a regular supply run, or maybe they just make a special trip because the shuttles can go in warp speed or whatever. But I just thought that was funny, a funny little thing. Like, okay, somebody had to do that because we don't have any evidence that there are automated transports, right? I mean, presumably, given the dots and the exocomps and some of the other technology present in the setting, you would think, okay, maybe there's an automated supply run from Bajor to Earth or to whatever, and maybe they just put it on an automatic, service. But it seems like Star Trek tends to rely on people to do the bulk of the grunt work, and it's like, okay, so somebody probably got that job. Hey, go back to Bajor, pick up Chancellor Aki's things and bring him back to Earth. It's like, okay, how many? What is that? Like a day? I don't know. I mean, you'd have to decide what the actual time is. I mean, it doesn't matter for the purposes of the episode. But I mean, that could almost be a campaign, right? Okay, your player characters, your job is the schlep stuff from point A to point B to support. I mean, it's a support thing, so it's clearly operations. I mean, that's something like the 32nd century Cerritos would do something like that, right? And I can just hear Boimler complaining about it, right? Like we're picking up stuff off of one planet to deliver it to another planet for this officer. Like, why are we doing this? How is this improving Starfleet's life or whatever, right? But that was just an interesting thing that I picked up on that I thought was funny when you start unpacking these things a little bit, right? Yeah, so really good there. Com badge, yeah, yep. Blow up the ship, music, character actions, character actions. Yeah. Anyway, so that was those are my thoughts. Starfleet Academy, really great start. I was really excited to see all of it. I was just engaged and uplifted by watching all the things happening, seeing the interplay between the characters, between the cadets, and also between the cadets and the senior staff, or the instructors. There's just nice Easter eggs throughout. It was really, it was a little, not disconcerting, but it was just interesting to hear Stephen Colbert's voice over the PA system. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it almost takes me out of the moment because it's so clearly Stephen Colbert, but at the same time it's like, oh, but that's kind of cool. So that's fine. Is there anything else critical? I just love the fact that so many of the alien species that we saw present on the screen call out all over the place. I mean, there's so many call outs to different Star Trek series. You got the original series, movies, Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, etc. There's just so much on the screen to take in. And in fact, I was just constantly pausing just to take in the eye candy and all the different details that are present in there. So yeah, so I was going to I was thinking about doing the thing where I just react to the video as it's playing in the background quietly, but this is a hour and a half episode, and I didn't want to do that. Now I've already been talking for 37 minutes, but I'm wrapping up here. So anyway, yeah, so a pilot episode, really important for a TV series, but certainly important for your campaign. Over decades of playing Star Trek RPGs in one form or another, I have prepared and run a lot of pilot episodes with new campaigns. Some of them crashed and burned for any number of reasons. Maybe the players weren't latching on to the setting that I was creating. We didn't maybe have an effective enough session 0 to kind of like all be on the same page about what we wanted. Maybe discovering that individually each player had a cool character, but they weren't meshing effectively, and there was no easy way to solve it. But sometimes it works, right? Sometimes you get the right mix of players, right mix of characters, right circumstances to play the game, and then it takes off and it does great. I think one of the things that had me immediately inclined to like this series is the fact that my longest running Star Trek campaign, and like the bar to which my group always aspires to achieve, we are convinced, and we probably hamstrung ourselves to be convinced that we'll never exceed it. But the very best Star Trek campaign that I was involved in was on a Galaxy class starship, of course, Next Generation, and it was the USS Athena, right? So I mean, come on, it's the Athena. The moment I heard the Starfleet Academy ship was the Athena, I was like, oh, I'm home. It's like every time on screen they're saying, oh, USS Athena to this, or the Athena's doing that. It's like, that's my ship. That's my home. That's my home. So it's just funny the connections that you make. Anyway, so super upbeat about this episode, super upbeat about this series and about where it's going to go. I am happy to hear your negative comments, but make them constructive, right? I don't need to hear the bile that's being spewed all over the place online, because like nobody should have patience for that. and I certainly don't. Like, if you don't have something constructive to say, then am going to very kindly block and ignore you and move on, because I need my mental health. and just listening to endless bile from the haters, there were times when I would engage and get snarky, but it's like, you know what, that's just too much energy and it's too negative, and I don't want to go down into that cesspool. So I am super excited about Starfleet Academy. I hope you are too. I hope you got some insights from this video about how to take all that stuff and put it into an RPG. Hopefully using Star Trek Adventures, but maybe you're using a different Star Trek RPG, or maybe you're using a different RPG entirely to play Star Trek, or a Star Trek-like game. So I hope you have fun with it. Like, subscribe, whatever's the usual YouTube things. Love to hear your comments. Again, as long as they're constructive. If it's a bunch of hate, I'm gonna delete it and block it, because I don't have the patience for it, and I don't want to have to share that with my viewers, right? Because come on, let's be positive, be happy, be joyful. Life is hard enough right now for so many people. We don't need more piled on top of that. So go boldly, have fun. I will be back soon with a discussion about episode 2 from an RPG perspective. So I hope you have a great day, and be safe, be well, and I'll see you all next time.